Okay, thanks, Linda. I'd like to welcome everybody to Growing Concerns for May the 1st. And I guess great weather out there again. We're faced with another snowfall overnight, which provided snow pretty much right from the southwest all the way to north of the park. Probably more of it happening in that probably from Kenton to the park and then north of the park where they got the brunt of it. But you get up into that Hamiota Shoal Lake area, they probably got 4 to 6 inches as well. So again, enough to slow down any thoughts of getting out to the field in the near future. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with a little bit of the crops update, not a whole bunch to talk about, not a lot of crop in the ground, and then we're fortunate today to have Kevin Elmy on, and he's going to talk a little bit about soybean seeding decisions. And Kevin is from Salt Coats. He operates the Elmy's Friendly Acres seed farm, and he's going to go through a bit about some of the stuff he's been doing with soybeans on his farm. So with that, yesterday on the way home, back up into the Rossburn Shoal Lake area, this was kind of the site we were seeing at about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Visibility was very poor and snow was coming down, and road conditions were poor. And as I mentioned, we were getting anywhere from 4 to 6 inches in the Hamiota to Shoal Lake area and more north of the park. So I guess, like I mentioned, this is going to definitely delay our seeding some more. Most of the producers that I've been talking to lately have been talking about, May long weekend was kind of what they were hoping to get out to get out onto the land, and hopefully the weather turns around here and it warms up, and that's still something that we can aim for. But I know in some areas we're definitely going to have areas where it's going to be wet, and we're going to be still dealing with moisture for a while. Like I mentioned, not a lot of crop to talk about except winter wheat, I guess. We've been doing some stuff with winter wheat in the office here, and grabbing some samples, growing out some plants, and we're seeing some real interesting things happening. And I guess I wanted to mention that tomorrow in Cirrus we're having a winter wheat meeting, and there's actually one in Hamiota today. And what we're doing is we're going through the winter wheat survival of the plants and see how they made it through the winter. So if you still have time, you can make it into Hamiota today for 10 o'clock. It starts. So if you're on the webinar, you could, right after the webinar, head into Hamiota if you're in that area. If not, tomorrow we're having a very similar one in the Cirrus here at Kirkup Lounge. And we're going to go through a few things that I think we've been getting a lot of questions in through the office about, whether it be varieties. I think one of the biggest one is the winter wheat survival, and how to determine if some of these plants are going to make it. And I've been spending probably the last 3 or 4 days of the last week and a half here just grabbing samples out in different fields and trying to see if they're going to make it, and see, especially the different stages, whether it be winter wheat that germinated and got into the 3 to 4 leaf stage last fall, or winter wheat that didn't germinate or just broke the germ and kind of sat in the soil all winter with a little bit of a sprout and maybe a bit of root. So I was able to dig up a lot of those kind of plants as well, and so we'll be giving all that information out tomorrow in Cirrus. We're going to have a few other speakers there as well. We're going to be talking a bit about fertility and winter wheat agronomy. We're going to have MASC there, and they're going to talk about the new insurance for our changes in insurance for 2013-14 growing season. We're going to talk about wheat streak mosaic and some of the diseases that producers need to be aware of in case the winter wheat crop that you have planted doesn't make it. And we're going to go over some of the options or some of the things you need to be watching for if you plan on tearing up that winter wheat. And and planting something else on those fields. So again, it's going to be an informative day. There'll be lunch served there, and so if you have a chance to make it, come down tomorrow for 10 o'clock. The other thing is just wanted to maybe throw a little bit of a reminder out there with the snowfall that's happened over this last evening here, and with the poor weather we've been getting up until then. We're getting quite a few calls through the office now of producers that are running out of feed for their livestock. And so if you have extra feed and have some available, if you could let us know at the GO offices here, we will take your name, and we could probably put you in contact with somebody fairly fast. You probably could advertise it yourself and get it sold pretty fast too. So if you have extra feed or think you'll have extra feed, if you could let us know, we could definitely put you in contact with people that are looking for feed. I guess with that, we've also been getting a lot of talk in the office about producers looking at their seeding plans for the year, and maybe looking at making some changes. And I don't think we're in a situation yet where we need to be in too much of a panic to make drastic changes to our seeding plans. But I think we should be thinking about some of our options. So with that, we're fortunate today to have Kevin on the line, and Kevin's going to talk about one of the crops that I think we've been getting probably the majority of the questions on is soybeans. And so I guess with that, Linda, I would like to turn it over to Kevin right now and get him to maybe give his presentation, and then we'll get back into some questions, and then a few things I have to finish off the webinar for today with.
Okay, thanks, Lionel. Kevin, you just need to click the button of Show My Screen. And just to mention, I was talking to, Brett Kaskiw from Killarney has mentioned that they also have a winter wheat meeting in Pilot Mound tomorrow at the drop-in center at 1:30, and I think very similar topics. So if anyone on the webinar is from that location, there is a meeting in Pilot Mound tomorrow starting at 1:30. So Kevin, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks for the invite to do a quick presentation on soybeans in the fringe. It's great to hear that there's a bunch of people interested in trying and learning more about soybeans in non-traditional areas. So at any time, if you have any other questions, you can, like I said, just fire away, or there's my contact information, so you can contact me after, and we can have further discussion. So with that, away we go. So at Friendly Acre Seed Farm, we're located straight west of Russell, and we've been playing around with soybeans for about 12 years now. We've been playing around with some conventional varieties, and we found some what we call daylight sensitive varieties. All varieties of soybeans are sensitive to daylight to start flowering, but what we're finding is there's some varieties that respond to longer days, and they don't require the heat that is I guess what a lot of them are being categorized as. On the flip side, one of the warnings is, guess what? There's a lot of people that said, a lot of companies that did some ratings last year, and we'll go through some of the climate data from last year. There's going to be some fairly significant surprises to some of the new growers with some of these varieties on what heat they actually need to mature. So we'll get into that a little bit later. So in 2012, we grew 3 varieties on the farm and field scale. They're all Thunder seed varieties. And the way the numbering system works is the 3, so the TH33003, the TH stands for Thunder seeds. The 3 stands for it's a Roundup Ready 2 variety. The next number, which is a 3 again, that is the first year that that variety is going to be available. So this is going to be the 33003 is first going to be available this year in 2013. The next three numbers are important because that's going to give you your relative maturity. And I much prefer the numbering system over the corn heat unit rating because of I feel it's a lot more accurate for being able to recommend and place these varieties. So 003, 00 means a very early maturing group. The 3 is your next relative maturity, so the lower the number, the earlier it is. So the 29002 is earlier than 29003, and the 32004 is a little bit later than the 003. The thing that may mess you up a little bit is, once again, the daylight sensitivity, but we have some quick ratings on that. So basically on our farm, we seed half of our soybeans on soybeans level, so soybean on soybean. We're finding we're getting about a 5 bushel yield increase from doing that. So tight rotations actually works pretty good as long as you have cruiser and you have a good defensive bean. The other half is on winter triticale stubble. We aim for 220,000 seeds per acre. As the seeding date gets bumped back a little bit, what you want to do is go to narrower rows and a little higher seeding rate, so 240,000 if you think you're getting a variety that's a little late, and it is getting a little later in May or into June. Cruiser Max for beans, it's all but a must to do. Optimize is a 60-day liquid inoculant that we put on the seed, and last year we used a product called N-Row granular inoculant. Granular inoculant and liquid inoculant, crucial to have both, and we'll go through some of the data from that. Last year we only got one pass of Weather Max on, and that's because we're so wet. And we started last year on seeding on the 18th of May, and we finished on June 2nd. One of the things you will find when you're going into cold, wet ground is when the soybeans come up, you'll see some yellowing on the cotyledons. I use an agronomist out of Wisconsin, Sean Conley, and I think he was starting to get sick of me because of all the questions I was asking, especially from a couple of years ago. But if the soybeans do come out of the ground and your soil temperature is a little on the cool side, you'll see some of yellowing, you'll see a little bit of brown spots on your cotyledons. He said don't worry about it as long as cotyledons stay on until you get your first trifoliate out. But it is crucial to wait for the cold soils to warm up, and one of the things that is crucial for soybeans is to make sure that you have a minimum of 8 degrees Celsius at the seed level 48 hours after seeding. So when people say, well, how am I going to know that? Well, the crop that you're seeding prior to your soybeans, wait 2 days, go out and do a soil temperature test 48 hours after seeding, and then it'll give you a pretty good indication of where you should be at. But you want to make sure you're dealing with warm soil, so that's one of the things where you can see these a little bit later, and you won't get too far behind. So we seeded on in I guess the 20th of May on this crop. So June 26th, what I was doing is I went out and if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a white pin flag, and what I was doing is I was taking pictures of the same plants throughout the year. So this way I wasn't just looking for the best part of the field, I just picked these 4 plants and we're taking pictures of them throughout the year. If you go to our website, you can see pictures from the last 3 years, and every Wednesday I go out and I take pictures of, once again, I'll pin flag it and take pictures so that when people are interested to see what the soybeans are looking like, it gives them an idea. This is the 33003 variety, and one of the things that you'll see is on the bottom is the cotyledons, and then the plants throw out their unifoliates. Unifoliates, that is a quick indication of how much pod clearance you're going to have for the coming year. And so it's one of the things that I watch, and you can see with this variety, that's just about 4 inches off the ground. The pod clearance is really quite good with it. And then the first trifoliates start folding out, and this with these ones, these are starting to push out the second trifoliate. So except for the road a little back behind, that shank must have been running just a little bit deeper. So by the first trifoliate, your liquid inoculant is kicked in, and you can see the nodules that are on the main stem of the root. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 nodules. These nodules tend to be a little bit smaller. They're basically the first step of getting your nitrogen fixation occurring within the plant. You can kind of see anybody that hasn't grown soybeans, kind of looks like a canola root somewhat, and depending on your compaction and soil conditions, the roots will vary somewhat. Technical difficulty. Oh, there you go. So there's granular inoculant. That's when the granular inoculant kicks in. This is what you'll see. Is on your secondary roots, you'll see a bunch of nodules out there. And in order to get maximum economic yield or maximum genetic yield, what you're going to need is about 16 nodules per plant. And so when you start looking at just this one root, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, there's lots just on that one. So the more granular inoculant you put down, the better off you are from what we've been seeing. And we'll go through some of the numbers later in the presentation on economic return on it. But basically, it's about 14 degrees when you're of the soil temperatures when the nodulation occurs. So on July 4th, once again, when I tell people that are growing soybeans for the first time, you're going to hate me through June. You're going to hate me through the first part of July because these things are going to be slow. They're going to be, they're not going to be canopying up where everything else is taking off and growing fast. These things are quite sluggish. So from the last picture to this picture, yeah, it's thrown out a couple more trifoliates, but really hasn't bushed up yet. On the 12th of July, I tell people that normally you can start seeing some flowers about between the 5th and the 10th of July, depending on seeding rate and all the other good stuff. They tend to be a small and conspicuous flower. They'll either be white or purple, and they'll last between 3 and 5 days. They'll occur in the crotch of the main stem and the branch and the leaf branch, and basically a new trifoliate will come out every 5 to 7 days, just as quick timing. You'll have 1 to 6 flowers per node, and normally you'll get 1 to 3, 1 to 4 pods per node. And you can see that the stems and the leaves of these soybean plants are really fuzzy. And what that's going to do is it's going to give the plant some insect resistance, some disease resistance, and actually some drought resistance. These things are really plastic on their on how their height is versus their yield. I've seen crops that were boot high and just would do 40, and I've seen stuff that was chest high and do 20 bushels an acre. So the height of the plant means very little. It's the number of flowers, number of pods, number of pods per plant that's going to drive your yield. So on the 17th of July, all of a sudden we started getting warmer nights. We had good moisture, so things started taking off. So they almost doubled in height in week from the 12th to the 17th. And then when we go to the 29th, I had to go look for my pin flag because I couldn't see it from the road. So I had to actually go digging through the crop. So right now that the crop is over 2 feet high. On the 29th, what it is, I pulled a plant and I took 3 pictures from the same plant. This is right at the top of the plant, so you're going to see some flowers that are happening. Those ones are already pollinated. You can see that they're not open anymore, so those are pollinated. Then about halfway down the plant, you can see that there's a little pod hanging on the left-hand side, and the other flowers have pollinated and drying down. Whether they're going to develop a pod or not, right now it's too early to tell. And then on the bottom, you can see that there's about a 2 centimeter pod hanging. So these things flower from the bottom up, they pod from the bottom up, and they mature from the bottom up. And that's where the plant kind of protects itself. So in the fall, most people, once again, I drove people crazy that I was using as my resources and just saying, you know, these things are grass green, it's the end of August, these things are never going to make it. And the one guy told me, he said, okay, look for one spot in the field where they're starting to yellow. And if they're yellowing, then you're going to be getting probably 80% of your yield in your whole field. And then I was astounded by that, because it just didn't make sense to me, because if a canola crop looks like this and it was going to freeze, you'd be close to zero. But because of the morphology, the way the plant is set up, it is able to protect itself. And why? Because as it's maturing, because it matures from the bottom up, it's dropping its leaves. And so you can see in the canopy that, you know, when you look at the bottom part of the plant, there's no leaves there. And basically what the plant does is, when the plant has, or the pod has got to the point where it has made physiological maturity, it starts dropping the leaves. So when you open up the canopy, it looks green on top, but underneath it, it is actually starting to mature. So like the picture on the left, you can see the pods on the bottom of that stem are yellowing, they're browning, and the ones on top are green. That is basically what's happening, is they are maturing on the bottom, and the greens are, the greener ones on the top, you know, they're coming along. The reason why on the right-hand side of that left picture they're still green is this is the year of the hailstorm that we got in Yorkton, and that one, that plant didn't die yet. It was set back, threw up more tillers, and so those pods are still green. There's still no leaves on them, so they're physiologically mature. On the right-hand side, there's a picture of the soybeans at maturity. They'll be brown, and what I usually tell people, so when they're going to go out and they're thinking of, okay, are they mature yet? You take a pod from, a fully developed pod from as high up on the plant as you can, and you twist it. If it pops open, most likely it's going to be ready to harvest. When you bite them, they're going to be biting like biting a Skittles candy. So they'll be chewy when they're dry. Basically, one of the things we were seeing this year is September the 9th, we had some plot trials on our farm, and we've been growing an old variety of 29002 under contract. And this one, the 29002 is about 2375 for corn heat units. The one on the right is a 2400. It's supposed to be the second earliest maturing variety in southern Manitoba. Yet you bring it up to our farm, and there was just about a 2-week difference between the two of them. And so this is with the huge difference between the daylight sensitive varieties and the heat sensitive varieties. The number of light sensitive varieties are fairly short. So going into looking out the window on May 1st, and there's still snow on the ground, we're going to be seeding the 29002 until probably the 10th or 12th of June, and not be concerned. Up in the Dauphin area, the 29002, actually there's another variety, I think it's 27005, was grown in Dauphin, seeded at the end of June a couple of years ago, and they made it flying colors. So that's one of the things really to watch. To ignore the corn heat units for the most part, but we really try and find out which ones are daylight sensitive on the maturity side. So then after the frost, you can see the 29002 on the left was basically, we'd probably go combine that one. The one on the right, pretty green, and the sample reflected that. So in our trial, I took the variety names out just from the standpoint of don't want to influence anybody's decision of what they're doing, but there's the yield ranges that we had from this past year, seeded June 2nd. So we're cracking 30 bushels an acre. Canola was averaged right around 30, seeded a few days earlier, and like we're harvesting the 29th of September. Green seed, that later maturing variety, did have green seed. There was a 7% yield hit, and you know, there was some issues there. Taking the next step, Saskatchewan University of Saskatchewan did some trials for the Western soybean adaptation trials. That plot was 30 miles north of us. They never combined it because they never got any yield, and it was seeded 1 day earlier than ours. So they're using different varieties, different agronomy, so agronomy and varieties are fairly crucial. These are going to be some pictures of the same variety from a few years ago. This is up in Carbon, Alberta. Pretty dry, but they still just about did 20 with just about no rain. This is over Kyle. He was averaging close to 30 with some hail and some antelope damage. This is down the Capella Valley at Stockholm. These guys have been averaging just around 40 bushels an acre and really enjoying the soybean experience. This is over in Beachy, 2 different varieties showing the differences. Once again, the corn heat units were relatively the same, but maturity-wise, when it hits the field in the outlook area, it definitely showed up. The inoculant trials, this is one of the things I want to spend a little bit of time on. One of the guys down in the Mydale area did a trial of having liquid inoculant only on the seed, ended up with 24 bushels an acre. But then when he added 10 pounds of granular inoculant, all of a sudden he added 9 bushels an acre, which is fairly significant. The other thing he did was he repeated that right beside, and what he did is he had some liquid fertilizer, a 3417 blend that he side banded, and so he went the 3417 blend with the liquid inoculant, ended up with 24 bushels an acre again, and then he had the liquid inoculant plus the granular inoculant plus the 3417, ended up with 34 bushels an acre, so he got a bushel an acre out of adding the fertilizer. So it shows you how important the granular inoculant is, and yet on the fertilizer side, not as important. From his trial, one of the really interesting things that he did a couple of years ago was when we saw the results from that one, he said, okay, so what happens if you're growing on virgin ground versus soybean on soybean? So on the left, there's his soybean variety trial. On the right, then there's inoculant trial. So he went on virgin ground, just liquid inoculant in the cruiser. 0 tag team, he got 22 bushels an acre. Adding 4 pounds, he got it up to 33. 7 pounds granular inoculant, 36. So nice yield bump. Soybean on soybean ground, 0 pounds of tag team, he's at 39. So soybean on soybean, even without the granular, was still better than the 7 pounds of granular on virgin ground. But adding 4 pounds of the tag team, he bumped up to 42 bushels an acre, and 7 pounds, he's up at 50, which who would have thunk that down in the Weyburn area you'd be looking at 50 bushel beans in trials. So interesting. Seeding rates. Quarry Seeds down in Oakville, if anybody's interested in looking at soybeans and research, go down to Oakville on August the 1st, I do believe. Quarry Seeds will be putting on their Valley Soybean Expo, and one of the things they do is they go through a lot of agronomy. And with the agronomy, what they're looking for is what is the best way of seeding beans? Where do you get your best responses? So with the what they do is they do some seeding rate trials, they do inoculant trials, seed treatment trials, and so this is one of the trials they did, and what they found was bumping the seeding rate up. Basically what they were seeing is earlier maturing, and seeing an earlier maturing, they're seeing a little better yield to a point, and adding the cruiser was the other thing they saw, was adding the cruiser in just about every case they were seeing about an 8% yield increase. So the cruiser, what we've been seeing is significant. What they found, or what you see in the chart here, is that at 220,000 seeds per acre is where you max out your yield, but that's using a cone seeder. So air seeders normally give 5 to 15% seed damage, so we're usually recommending using the 220,000 seeds per acre. Once again, inoculant trials. This is where they base their inoculant rates on, is from doing these trials and talking to people. So the more granular inoculant you put down plus the liquid, they're just basically seeing higher yields. So one of the trials we did on the farm in 2008 was we used bear seed. We used Celtec as just a liquid inoculant. So bear seed, we're at 13.5 bushels an acre. Adding the liquid, we're at 18. Every time that we add something, we end up getting more yield. So where we saw the best was using the Celtec, which is liquid inoculant, Cruiser Max, soil implant at 4 pounds an acre, and Tag Team at 4 pounds an acre, which got us 33 bushels an acre, which was 246% of the bare seed check. So then my banker said, "Oh, that's neat, but what about the cost and where's your net margin?" So you can see on this chart that every time you added, you increased your rate of return. So and this is using $9 soybean, so it isn't like I'm using 15 or 18 buck soybean price. This is a fairly low soybean commercial price, and running those numbers through. So seeded May the 17th. This is one of the pictures that Fred Welke from Saskatchewan Crop Insurance took. It shows the difference between the full meal deal on the left and just using liquid inoculant. You can see the liquid inoculant only is it's pretty sick. Not enough nodules on it, not enough nitrogen produced. Whereas the full meal deal out yields it, looks nicer, nicer crop to hand. So the reason why this is what you're trying to do with the soybeans, is produce these big, healthy nodules. So these things will stay nice and pink right until the first part of September, when the plant starts dying, and that's where it gets its nitrogen fixation from. When you're playing around with different plant types, this is a bushy plant type, and what we did is just did a quick experiment of using 8-inch centers and 17-inch centers. So if you're dealing with a plant that pods really low, go to a little water rose is going to get those pods hard, but it's going to add about 3 to 5 days onto your maturity. So on water rose, this kind of looks like when you're harvesting. Leaves fall off, and you can motor right along. Normally, like we're using a 925 flex header, John Deere flex header, and we're cutting about 4.5 to 4.7 miles an hour. And we can easily do 10 to 12-hour days when we're harvesting. This is what it looks like when you solid seed. Once again, you can see the ground. You can move along quite quickly. So in 2012, we harvested 610 acres. Started on the 25th of September, ended up on the 29th, and we averaged 28 bushels an acre. The really neat thing was when we were going through and comparing fields, the later we were seeding, the higher the yields. And that's where the first couple fields were in that 25, 26 range, and we ended up at about 33 bushels an acre in the fields. So in 2004, people are saying, okay, so what happens if we have a cool season and an ugly fall, early frost? Well, in 2004, I don't think it could get any worse. So this is a sample from one of the fields, and it looks pretty ugly. This field, for deductions, was right around $1 a bushel off of what everybody else was getting on a perfect year. So if the buyers were buying at $10, this one would have came in at $9. So the grading of them, you're allowed, going into the feed market, you're allowed 5% greens and 15% cracks, and usually it's 1 cent per percent that you go over. So from the standpoint of grading, not too bad. This is in 2006. This is a 2450 corn heat unit variety. We received 2,200 corn heat units based on farmzone.com, and this is the sample we produced, which basically would be, well, one little unthrashed pod in there. That'd be well less than 1% dockage and no problems with grading. So in 2012, what happened from farmzone.com, you can see the blue line is what our average curve is, and in 2012, the purple line, so we ended up being just about 250 corn heat units hotter than normal, and well, there's the story. So for a lot of these people growing beans, or you've seen beans last year, be careful on what the on last year's results. Long-term results are what you're going to be looking at, and jumping into beans for the first time is going to be a little tricky if you're just basing it on last year's. So, and this is, I think, quite reflective in most places in Western Canada. It was a warmer year. So that was the presentation. If anybody has questions, feel free to either ask me now or we can discuss it later.
Yes, Kevin, I have some questions here. One of them is, how do you adjust row width as the seasons get later? Does your drill allow you to do that easily?
I guess the challenge with the row spacing would be if a person had two drills, one was on 10s, one's on 12s, that'd be one way. The other thing is using splitter boots. If, like for us, what we were doing is we used some Saskatchewan chrome, some duct tape, and all we did is, in order to get to the 17-inch rows, is we just got some duct tape over at the manifold and go to wider rows. So if someone was going to be going into a late spring, late seeding situation, and you have the ability to change your spreader boots, that would be the easy way. Otherwise, yeah, what you got is what you got, and the quick rule of thumb is don't go beyond 12 inches, which that fits for most people.
Okay, and we have a question on how many days, on average, did it take you to get your crop to maturity?
Pardon me?
On average, how many days did it take you to get your crop to maturity?
Okay, that will vary with the varieties. The 29002, we had them mature. Like when I talk maturity with soybeans, it's that when usually they say 90% of your pods are brown, and with 29002 we were about 95 days. With the 33003 we were about 102, and the 32004 were about 105. For that other variety that was in the trials, would be probably 125, I'm guessing. The frost sped them up in a hurry.
Okay, and one last question here, Kevin. Any disease issues with soybean on soybean stubble?
The neat thing with soybeans is when they were brought into the United States back in the 1920s, the rotation at the time was, well, first of all, they were brought in to use as a forage crop, and what they were doing is growing this legume as a forage crop for 2 years, and then turning around and seeding corn and getting just some fantastic nitrogen fixation. So what they've been doing in the States up till probably the 80s or 90s was soybean corn rotation. So what we're able to do is a good chunk of the diseases that were susceptible in soybeans, because of the intense rotational pressure that they had, they were able to then go in and have some genetic resistance and get us to the point where a lot of those the issues that we had 50 years ago aren't there. We have genetic resistance. Then you start throwing Cruiser Max on it, and that's just going to just make your seedlings that much stronger, healthier. You will see white mold, Sclerotinia. In 12 years, we've seen that once widespread. Rotation made zero effect on whether we had the white mold in the field or not. It showed up everywhere. The reason why it showed up was because of a hot, humid August. When you're dealing with soybeans that are waist high, the canopy is wet, the white mold can be a problem. The response to fungicide is very hit and miss. So the jury's still out on whether we can go in and do a proper fungicide application and get economic results out of it.
Okay, now I have a question here. It says you are using 003 and 002 maturity beans. This producer is in southern Manitoba near the border, and how much farther would you go for maturity, 006 or 007?
That will kind of depend on when you can seed. Down and close to the U.S. border, 005, 006s would, once again, depending on where it is on the 005 rating, and is it an early 005, 006? That's going to be one of the questions. But 005 is down at the border, it's going to be no problem. 006, if you're down in the Winkler area, you could probably go to a 007 without any concerns. Down in the Melita area, 005s, I wouldn't be too concerned about.
Okay, I think that's
and one
all
of the
the...
things when you start dealing with... Oh, sorry. One of the things that when you start going further south, you're going to see less and less response to daylight sensitivity, especially on the early maturing varieties. A 006 daylight sensitive down in Winkler, you're not going to see too much difference. It's going to be fairly consistent from year to year.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I'm just going to unmute Lionel, and if he's got any questions, go ahead.
Kevin, yeah, I got a question for you too. Regarding your rotation, you're sowing, do you have much canola? Are you growing much canola in your rotation? We have a lot of producers here that are probably a weak canola rotation, and I see that like a lot of yours are going to go on soybean or winter triticale stubble. Did you see a problem with having canola, like a canola in your rotation with growing soybeans?
The biggest problem is Roundup Ready canola volunteers, and if anybody has grown any other variety or any systems, guess what? There's some gene leakage in some of the other systems also. So the Roundup Ready canola is going to be your #1 weed. What our traditional rotation has been is soybean, canola, winter triticale. From the standpoint of disease in the canola, we've seen zero response to our fungicides in our canola in the last 7 years, and meanwhile everybody else is pushing the fungicide harder. So one of the ways to manage the Roundup Ready canola in the Roundup Ready soybeans is #1, either buy a rotary cleaner and just run them through right after harvest, take the canola out, or you can use kind of a half rate pursuit right after seeding, just as the beans are emerging or just before they emerge, right after you roll them. That seems to take care of a lot of the canola. We used some Basgran last year and actually had some really good success with that. My biggest problem is bringing something out that I can actually clean out and make some money on. So I got some mixed emotions about taking out too much of the canola.
Okay, well, is there any other question, Linda, before we leave?
No, I don't have any more questions. So.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Kevin. That was a lot of real...
Sorry, Lionel. I do have one question here that just came in. What would the best crop be to seed on the soybean stubble?
That's the really nice thing with soybeans. #1, one of the things you want to do is keep them away from Luntrell. That's about the only thing you really want to keep them away from in rotation. So if you're using Flax Max or Prestige or something with the Luntrell, keep away from that. But besides that, depending on where you are, we've had them going into some fairly heavy wheat stubble that they're able to just blacken up the strip where the seed was going with really good success. A lot of people go on canola stubble because it's easy to blacken up under these wet, cooler years. The next crop after growing soybeans, you have a clean slate. You can go to any crop. They are a mycorrhizae associating plant, so going to flax works well. Going to oats, going to we've tried just about every crop that we grow on here on the farm, and in every case, we've seen significant yield increases after growing soybeans.
Okay, well, again, thanks, Kevin. That was a great presentation, and got a lot of good information, and a lot of good questions came out from it as well. Um, if we have producers or people that are wanting to ask further questions, if you need to get a hold of Kevin, you could. He had his information on the presentation. And we have the information at the office here as well, so we could also get you in contact with them. I guess with that, I've got a couple more slides to finish off for today. And I would like to just mention again about the Winter Wheat Survival Clinic happening today in Hamiota. It starts at 10 o'clock, so if you're close to Hamiota, you still got time to get there. And if you can't make it to Hamiota, then tomorrow we're having the same clinic in Souris here at the Kirkup Lounge. And like I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of good information there regarding this year's winter wheat crop. So plan to attend that. I guess yesterday when I was on my way home, I seen this at one of the dealers, and they had it parked beside each other, and I just said, how times have changed. We've gone from an air seeder, which was one of the best ways to put crop in when it first came out, to hauling around 5-6 times the size of a tank. So things are changing. Again, if you've got questions or you have requests for information you're wanting regarding any of the webinars, or want some information about upcoming webinars, this is my contact information and Linda's contact information. And these are the MAFRI FPAs in the Southwest and the South Parkland area, and their numbers as well. So if you have questions regarding anything throughout the growing season, you can contact any of these people, and we can go from there. So I guess with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and hopefully next week we're talking about almost being in the field. So we'll end the webinar there, and thanks for attending.